Hey, beautiful people, welcome to the Mixxy Mashup, where we dive into all things trendy, gossipy, and virtually addictive going on in entertainment every week. Thanks for clicking play. I'm your girl, Tammy. Let's get started. Now, y'all know I had to touch on item number one, which is our girl, Anithia Leaks, aka Nene, aka the HBIC or the legendary housewife of Atlanta, the icon, according to our girl. And she is iconic in reality TV, so I'll give Nene that. But as y'all know, this week, Nene touched bases with Carlos King for the second time on his podcast as she began to still explain what's going on with her currently in her situation with Bravo and her issues around RHOA. I don't know about y'all, girl, but the main reason that I wasn't feeling this interview in the second half is just because as much as I love Nene and as iconic I think she is to television and reality TV, we're never going to take that away from her. Nene was full of it this week. I don't know how y'all felt, but it was just so much going on in the second half of this interview. I'm going to touch on some of the things I just felt like she really was just really ridiculous about. And then I think she was saying some valid points. Let me talk about the valid points real quick. I do think that it was interesting to find out how the girls were being paid, and specifically Nene was saying that herself, when she started out, she was negotiating for season 13, which is, of course, we saw the last season. I think we saw her in was like season 12, I believe. And she was offered limiting episodes. So we kind of got to find out that Nene essentially wasn't trying to leave the show. She was negotiating for her, and they started giving her less episodes. And the other girls were getting more episodes than her. And, I thought that was just an interesting tidbit that a lot of us didn't know about. They started to tell her that she was unhappy, and that's why they were giving her less episodes. I do think that this point was important for the viewers to understand and people to understand in television. When you become problematic, and not to say that Nene's completely problematic in this, but if they think you've become problematic, sometimes they feel like they're paying you too much. People will try to start causing issues and saying things like unhappy or unreasonable to work with. Now, low key, we have heard tea over the years that Nene has been somebody who can at times be problematic to like the background set energy. She kind of got a little bit egotistical, but I'm guessing no much more than any other person. I think that, Bravo leadership has changed over the years. I think a lot of people assume that Andy was always at the helm, especially with programming. He left programming a long time ago. Once he got into the other job that he had, like he has influence there, but he doesn't run programming for Bravo. It hasn't quite for quite some years because it would be a conflict of interest with him having the show as well. So I do think that this could have been a punishment to her a little bit if they felt like she was demanding too much salary wise, or if they felt like she was getting what they considered to be too big for her britches. They might have been feeling like they wanted to, teach her a lesson by giving her less episodes. And so they tried to add, well, you're so unhappy. You're not happy with how things are going, so maybe you should appear less. So for that point, I do hope that what is happening right now with this possible, reality TV star sort of going to the networks and saying, hey, we need a union because there's some things happening that are wrong here, does work out, because I do think that they were trying to punish her. And I feel like that might have been retaliatory behavior. And, if Bethany's attached, my feelings on her, I'm not really a fan of Gollum, but I do think that this is the most useful she could be in this capacity, to use her money and influence to sort of help out the situation that she was a part of. Then by all means, Bethany needs one in her column. Usually she's very annoying to me, but she isn't incorrect in this capacity. I don't feel like she's the person to continuously lead this, because I don't see her being somebody who is not invested in this in some like non-altruistic way. So we'll see how that goes. But let it be this person. I think it would be harder for a Black woman to come through and do some of these things. So just because I think the backlash you get, the blackballing that you get for certain situations, I think is important that Bethany kind of is the initial face on this. And I think she will make it so annoying for Bravo, for NBC, that they will have to curb to some of those things. So we'll see how that goes. Nene also touched on her issues with Kim. I always actually stood with Nene on this particular point, which was that when she was initially using Kim as an example, we could go back to plenty of bloggers and vloggers that kept saying that Nene was using the race card, and they didn't understand why. And I always understood that she was using Kim as the example to showcase the difference between her and the other housewives. I can't really use myself in the situation or another housewife on the show. I have to show the difference. If I'm saying, hey, I think there are things that are happening very different from race, I'm not on these other shows, so I can't use those as an example, but I can use the difference between myself and someone like Kim. So I thought it was interesting that Carlos had all of the older housewives on the show when Nene first filed this complaint, to sort of say like Nene was playing a race card and the other housewives did not have her back. And I'm talking about the OGs. If y'all remember, they did not have Nene's back in that very beginning, where they were, going back and forth as to why she was including is so ridiculous. So she just throwing up the race card and now everybody's on their side. See how people switch up on you? But I do feel like Nene was always valid, and I always felt that she was valid in using Kim as the example, because that's what you would do in litigation when you need to prove that, hey, I'm having a difference in treatment. If you were going to do this at your job or any place else, you would be like, hey, there's a man that is getting paid more than women, or there's women that are getting paid more than men. You need to show the differences between the two groups. And Kim was the only other person, that wasn't a Black woman on the show. And they were showing the differences in how she's allowed to work, how the other women had to always show up, things like that. And we have episodes where Kim was acting the ass and acting a fool and not showing up for work, storming off, not filming scenes. And was she penalized for this diva behavior that they're penalizing Nene for? She was actually given a spinoff that was on for quite some years. So I do think that she had valid points there always, and maybe even around like the different treatment that happened. However, I do think that for me, this is where the good part and the realistic and the sensical part of the interview ended, because the rest of this was some nonsense. And as y'all see, I have quite a few articles that are on the that you can see that I posted, that just are just showing how much of a hypocrite Nene also is in these very moments. Because to me, I'm always wondering, she went into this big thing about how she would never come back to RHOA, and if she would do it, she would do it for the fans or for TV, because it's really for the fans. And I'm just thinking to myself, the way you described so much in the litigation about how it's just so oppressing to work there and tough to work there, you sure are wanting back in so bad. And I want to talk about this because I feel like this has also happened with Phaedra, who spent a lot of years on the show, down in a lot of the other women saying, this is your only thing. I'm an attorney. I can always go do something else. Let me tell you something. The girls miss the fame. Every single time they miss the fame. They miss the fame, and some of them miss the money and are pretending like they're richer than they are, and they really aren't. And a lot of them need the money. They need the checks. And they also need the fame. They've gotten addicted to it. They want to be on it. Because if this was not a big deal for you, this would have just been a part of your life that you did and went on with. You wouldn't still be trying to get back on reality TV or be on other shows. You would immediately go to the next step in your life and be like, hey, reality TV is something I did 10 years ago. It was great. It was a moment in life, but I moved on to this. And I feel like for somebody to play themselves up so much like Nene does, and her ego about how she was the show and how she was this and that, man, you've never really moved from this point. You're still mostly only known for RHOA. We only know you for Real Housewives of Atlanta. Some fans missing you from Real Housewives of Atlanta. You talking about Real Housewives of Atlanta. You being on TV all the time talking about Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's really all we know her for. So it's one of these things that it's got to be a weird and very delusional world to live in to feel like you've been able to move on and impress. She doesn't have this huge acting career. She hasn't made opportunities for herself, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I just feel like I wish the girls would stop living in delusion about the fact that they missed the fame from this show, and this has been the one thing they can do. Because to quote Nene, Candy's been on the show since season 2. And while she claims that Candy has never come to work, Nene has never learned how to hustle outside of this show. Because the opportunity that she has not gotten, which she keeps stating nobody's given her an opportunity, she hasn't made any for herself. She got an opportunity that Candy gave her, and she messed that up by making an essay joke on stage and then got kicked off a tour. She got one job with Ryan Murphy that she was on for a very short period, and then we saw nothing after Glee. There's been no movies, there's been no other things, and this is when she was still on the show. We have no spinoffs, honey. We have no Zeus network show. We have no current own network show. So it's one of these things of you had others. We got no no other shows. And these were all shows that could have come on while Nene was on Real Housewives. So all these opportunities that she feels like she didn't get offered to her, she also didn't make any for herself. And the difference between her and Kandi is that Kandi wasn't lazy and always hustled to use this opportunity the same way that Bethany did, which is to make something from whatever the situation is, not looking for Bravo to make her happen. Kandi wanna a toy line, she went and got a toy line. Kandi wanted to do, and she went and created something, and then she got distributors that sell that toy line across the country. That brand is still going and still very active. Every single time she's like, okay, I'm gonna make this opportunity for myself. Nobody's handing me anything. And that's the difference between Nene. So for somebody that don't go to work, maybe Nene needs to sit down with Kandi, have a conversation about how to get some work. And she can show you how to hustle up some of your own ideas instead of sitting around waiting for somebody to try to make you into Kim K. Let's move on. So she then also tried to talk about, Marlo eating the girls up. We're going to move on from that really quickly because we know that's not happening. Marlo is simply just hitting at the lowest possible fruit and is getting tiring and boring. Marlo certainly cannot read anybody and is not reading anybody, but it's clear that she needs an ally constantly in this situation, and so it's going to be Marlo. At one point, I remember not that long ago, they asked her, did she think Marlo deserved the peach? And she said no. Now it's something like, oh, I think Marlo does deserve a peach, and that she's still friends with Marlo. So Marlo is somebody she's really friends with in real life, and it is what it is. She said Kandi is overrated and overpaid. We know that that's BS. We basically know that Nene's had a problem with Kandi since season 2, and she will always have a problem with Kandi and Kenya because she never casted them. She helped cast that first set of girls. She didn't bring Kenya on the show. And Kenya had a little notoriety in the Black community prior to Nene being on our HOA. We knew who she was before she got on here. We did not know who Nene was before she got on the show. The same thing with Kandi. We knew who Kandi was before she got on the show, and she had money before she got on the show. She was already a multimillionaire when she got on the show. And so her empire just grew and enhanced on the show because she learned how to hustle and finesse that. And Nene didn't have that before she got on this show. In fact, Greg exposed that they didn't really have the money they had for the first 2 seasons when him and Nene got into it around the time that they were going to divorce on that radio show. And there's also, and I can't remember what the name of it was, but there was also a clip on here from, I think, Dwight's old business partner or friend or whatever that was also friends with Greg and Nene, who claimed that he loaned money allegedly to them during the beginning parts of the season because they were trying to build their self up for the show. It's still, I believe, on YouTube. But so the idea that the girls don't show up, or the girls don't show up with real storylines, when everybody's storyline was questionable that first season, honey, because if we start getting into what some of the OG women's real situations were versus what they showed us on television, I suggest you Google the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and look up some articles about some of these girls prior to getting on that show. Everybody was living a questionable life. She said that Kandi should never be friends with Portia because she's not cool with Phaedra anymore. That's not really our business. And I don't personally think that Kandi owed Phaedra a damn thing. Once you accuse me of SA and the possibility of doing any sort of SA situation to you, I owe you nothing, period. You're lucky that I haven't fought you outside on the street somewhere. So the fact that she didn't make up with Phaedra, not really a Kandi requirement. Like if Phaedra ever wanted to do something and Kandi said no, I would be completely cool with that. This idea that she owed that same situation to Portia, they worked out their situations. I do think that Phaedra used Portia. Portia's grown and she's not without accountability, but she did accept her accountability. And Phaedra sat on that couch and never accepted her accountability and left with that situation. So she didn't owe her that moment at all. That would have been her throwing Phaedra a lifeline. And once you have said that I will SA people, and I'm looking to SA people, I don't owe you any sort of lifetime. You can drown. Okay. She said that the girls aren't exciting as much as exciting. I will agree that some of the other people around them make the girls not even have to work, but it's just not as interesting. I think we need to get rid of a lot of these cast of characters. Her narrative around people being starless has been something that she's been saying since before then. So the idea that she's like, oh, I've never shot anybody in the back, I'm a good person. Anytime somebody got to keep telling you that they're a good person over and over in an interview, they're not a good person. And Nene has said that several times over the years that she's a good person. She's a good person. If you have to keep repeating to people that you are a good person, that means that there are character flaws and there are things that people see with you, or that you're always coming up as a common denominator in something that makes people not trust you. And I think since probably season 3 or 4, Nene has consistently been on, when she was invited onto Andy's couch, constantly throwing shade at the other women. Now, part of it is to sell that show, but the other part of it was her always implying that, this person isn't needed, that person isn't needed. Not necessarily saying they need to get fired, but just always adding it in that this person isn't needed. And I think that over that time, it does create a resentment with some of the people, because you are coming from my job. You are coming for my job for the show. And so you got to understand that people aren't necessarily going to stand up for you when the time comes, if every time that you're supposed to be standing up for me at other venues, you're not. And, you can keep coming at everybody and going hard and acting like this, big bad wolf. But when the wolf is trapped in trouble, don't nobody help the wolf. I do agree with Nene that, the current cast, I would say minus for me, Kenya and Candy, is just blah to me. I do like Drew, but I do need to know where we're going with her storyline. I absolutely do not understand why Marlo is, to me, what Carlos asked Nene was, is Marlo the example? Because this is what he's heard online. And I probably have been somebody who's agreed with this plenty of times, that Marlo is the example to me of what you don't do to give, when you give a friend to the show a peach, and that's why you keep some people a friend to the show. In the words of Nene, I think she's the class in the show. She's very annoying. And it's one of those things where she's just starting fights and it feels fake. It feels like produced uh, energy. And it just is one of those things where I can't watch it all the time and really feel like Marlo is a housewife. She doesn't really bring any class to the situation. She just wears expensive clothing. Sonya's boring. She was born on her own show, on her WeTV show. She's born on this show. Sonya's family is exciting, and that is why we care. We would not care if Sonya's family wasn't on it, because we didn't care on Sonya's own show when her family wasn't on it. I do think that I love that Carlos pointed out that although they tried to make it sound like it's such a slump, being the number 3 show on a network is not ridiculous. No show stays on top forever. No network show, even the best produced shows and the ones we love the most, rarely stay, and that's included scripted shows that stay at the number 1 spot. People fall all up and down on the ratings chart. And it's important to understand that people are still badly reporting how ratings are shown, because they're not looking at the way that television has changed. When Nene was on that show, streaming wasn't even popular like it is now. They would still never get the 5 million views that they used to get back in the day, because we consume television differently. And the fact that this is constantly used as an example, as if it's putting the network out of business, they're still not going to be, they're going to have different moments. And people consume TV differently now. I don't watch all of these shows in real time on television. A lot of us stream. And even with the streaming numbers, they only use a certain period at the very beginning of the week to when they capture those numbers to try to capture them for that article. So that doesn't count if, hey, I couldn't watch RHO for the first 2 nights and I had to watch it on Wednesday instead of on Monday or Tuesday when they're capturing that data. And still, Nielsen doesn't completely know how to capture these things. So we need to take that into consideration as well. I really don't care. People are watching it. They're watching it on Peacock. They're watching it on Bravo. They're watching it online. We're still looking at it. Nene also said that she likened herself to Beyonce. I was like, girl, please. We know Marlo is not reading anybody for the gods. She said that Sheree is not an anchor for the show. I do agree. Sheree was never a girl to get the girls together. But I do agree with Sheree said, and this was something that Nene said in her first interview, about the fact that Sheree was not, she said Sheree was and not an anchor, but she made it seem as if she was the show. And Sheree said it was an ensemble, and Sheree was absolutely right. Although we enjoyed Nene's character and she is a fan favorite, the show doesn't work without the other women. We don't have a Nene spinoff for a reason. We don't have a Nene only show for a reason. She hasn't had a spinoff while she was on that show. She didn't have a spinoff when she was off that show. And there's a reason for that, because she needs another person to play off of. So it was an ensemble. We cared about these other women's lives. Their stories mattered to us. We were into their stories. And we were into their stories when Nene wasn't necessarily on the show. When she was off the show, we still watched the show during those years. They even had a high-rated season when Nene wasn't on. We care about the other women. Their ensemble cast worked well together. So the idea that she was the show, and if she wasn't on there, it wouldn't be It's just crazy. She also touched on the fact that her and Wendy Williams aren't cool anymore. Obviously some of it is due to Wendy's illness, but Wendy was also Jekyll and Hyde with her. I completely understand why Needy got rid of this situation. I feel like Wendy is definitely not a girl, and she's also really a hater when anybody is in the same arena with her or challenges her a bit. I've seen that with other situations, and I appreciate when other women have stepped up and gotten her together, similar to what Omarosa did. And y'all got me actually praising Omarosa, which but I agree that Omarosa needed to get her together at that moment. And so I appreciate the fact that she did. I completely, excuse me, understand and believe that Nene was trying to get a show. Now, why would Tom Arnold, who was trying to put her to have that show fail? Because, girl, when have we ever cared about seeing anything with Tom Arnold? But I definitely believe that Wendy probably has something to do with getting her show shut down because she saw Nene as a challenge, and that was going to be a problem for her. We liked her personality. I could definitely see Nene doing some type of daytime talk show that's similar to what Wendy had, and that was going to be a problem for her. So it is what it is on that. The last thing she kind of touched on, which I just was like, okay, was the whole Kim K opportunity thing. And y'all heard me talk about this a couple minutes ago, but I just feel like Nene is delusional when it comes to the idea that opportunities were just given to everyone. We can all not like the Kardashians, and certainly they're not on my radar as anything to like, but I am aware of who they are. And I did watch the first few episodes of their season, their show. And I have to say that people can hate all they want, and I'm certainly again not a Kardashian fan, but I do respect the shit out of uh Kris Jenner's hustle. And the fact that, she drummed up a lot of business for Kim in those very early days and even after. She really taught her girls how to build networking relationships. And Kris does that. She is always working and always building relationships for them. Even they've been on their show and they've met with people and she built relationships. And I think people always forget that she managed Bruce, now Caitlyn, prior to that. And when they were on the show, she was in the midst of being his manager. And he had at the time, been this Olympian that everybody like loved. And he was still getting talking gigs at corporations and things like that because she was managing him. So she was learning about contracts and how to manage someone and the commitment of time and how to negotiate things within the contract through that management. So when it came over to Kim and their situation, it was just different. Let me know if y'all want to, and drop down in the comments and let me know if y'all want me to do a video, because I could do a comparison video on why I think these two don't actually, this narrative that Nene versus Kim is not a situation. But either way, I just feel like she did a lot of begging and less about creating opportunity for herself. The idea that Nene said that she wanted to do a podcast and couldn't when there are kids in their basement doing podcasts that have nothing but like a basic microphone or their iPhone, and then they blow up. It was ridiculous to me that somebody who actually has money and could get somebody to edit, who could get somebody to edit their videos, edit the audio, decorate their homes, to have a live podcast that could then turn into something that people now are coming to you with deals, because they're not going to care about no blackball once they realize that it makes money. They'll get over that. And the idea that she used that to say, well, nobody's giving her the opportunity to have a podcast when she could have did the one. And I'll give you a good example of how I know she's not a hustler and doesn't have a hustler's mentality. She sat on this interview for an hour and a half and gave all that viewing and rating time to Carlos King. Really, Nene? This was your podcast episode. Well, y'all, our Houston hottie is back on the scene, Miss Meg Thee Stallion. Of course, we've been seeing Meg everywhere recently. We've been seeing her at the Louis Vuitton show. We've been seeing her perform throughout the summer at various gigs here and there. She performed in Houston a couple of months back. But our girl is looking great. She's looking moisturized. She's looking fresh and refreshed. She's looking fantastic. We're loving the curly hair. And she just recently hinted at getting back into the studio and making some music. She's recently been doing a lot of promo shots and a lot of backroom content for a couple of brands. And she's also been seen with her producer, Little Juke Made It, in quite a few of those promo shots. So she's been hinting at the fact that she's back in the studio making music. I know I'm super excited. It's getting cold. So, Tina Snow might be back out here soon. She's also supposed to be in a new musical called Cardi'S. It's actually a movie that is like an improv kind of film. It's like a musical, but it's an improv musical that's by this very popular improv group called the Upright Citizens Brigade. And Meg plays like this powerful businesswoman in it. It sounds very interesting. The role sounds like it's going to be really, really interesting. She seems to be some type of boss that is, she's a, I guess, employer to these two guys who she ends up making a joke to about that they could be brothers. And they kind of look at each other one day and realize they could be twins. And so they kind of go on this journey to find out who their real parents might be. And then they find out their parents are divorced and they're trying to get them back together. So it sounds kooky. It sounds crazy. It sounds like absolutely a phase and a place that Meg should be in, which is just to continue to grow and expand into other parts of entertainment. I think she definitely has a personality for films. This film sounds like a great intro into this. Now, I don't know when this is going to all go down. Well, I think this is a finished film, but I don't know how this is going to work in this climate. As we know, SAG-AFTRA is actually on strike along with the writers on strike. So it's one of those things where we don't really know what's happening in entertainment. So many projects have gotten pushed back. So I don't know how the promo for all of this will go, but I'm just happy to see our girl happy and living her best life. Two of our faves, our childhood faves, I feel like, the direct lineage without being, the cousins of Michael and Janet Jackson, aka Ciara and Chris Brown, have teamed up for a new song, How We Roll. It's amazing. I got a chance to see the video last week. Last week when it came out. They looked and sounded amazing. I feel like it's really a flowy, dope song. When I think of the song, I think of skate party. I feel like pool party vibes. I feel like just a dope ethereal vibe. It just reminds you of just like the relaxation that we used to feel when we listened to R&B. It just made us feel good and great. And I feel like we just haven't had that in a while. The new song is called How We Roll. It's their first collaboration in about 14 years. It's dance heavy. The video is exactly what we've been looking for. I knew when I saw the promo, I was geeked out. I wanted to see, we've been waiting for like a dance battle with the two of them because it's been too long. We had a little bit of something at the BET Awards a few years back, and then that's kind of been it. We know recently there was some controversy around Chris performing, I believe, for the AMAs because it was, I think in 2022, it would have been the 50th year of Thriller, I believe. And he was going to perform and do a Michael Jackson tribute, and Ciara was a part of that tribute. And then it got recalled, literally 2 to 3 days before he was supposed to perform, and they had been practicing for the whole thing. So I love that they kept their promise because they told the fans that something would come. We've been needing to see and wanting to see these two do something together, and they did not disappoint. Their first collaboration was back in 2009, where they did something on. It was a Ciara album, I think her fantasy album called Turntable. So I was super excited to see a visual element because I think we all were completely hyped to see this. So I hope that this is not the last time we get to see and hear them perform a song. So far, the song's been doing very, very well. I think it came out on Friday, the video. I loved seeing all the dance moves. It just reminded me of how dope R&B used to be. I do like some of the current people of today, but I just feel like we're missing that flowy, dope vibe. The dancing was incredible. They both were just so smooth. You could just tell how naturally talented both of these people are. A big fan of both's music, especially Ciara. I just feel like a lot of people don't give her enough respect or shine. And it was just nice to see her be able to still show the girls this is how you really do it. And I think the song is just dope. So I'm glad to see these two collaborated despite all the hate. I know there was a little bit of backlash about dealing with Chris, but the idea that people pick and choose who they want to get into it with about Chris Brown's collaborations when so many women have, and so many Black women specifically, have collaborated with him over the years past both of his prior situations. And so many women that go to the show are still. So people got to pick a side as if they're going to hate or not hate, or they're going to secretly be fans and secretly go to shows and then condemn him online because it seems popular for you to be able to go viral trying to be some Black woman activist. I absolutely understand some of the fervor around it, but I also wonder about the hypocrisy around who we pick and choose to pull up their past all the time and who we allow to learn from their past and to be a better person or to grow into a better person. So tell me what y'all think. Would y'all support the song? Did y'all see the video? Did y'all enjoy it? I know I got my life. But Let me know what y'all think in the comments. So, y'all, unfortunately, our girl Lizzo is going through it right now. So recently, Lizzo, a civil action lawsuit came up suing Lizzo. It was a action between some former dancers that worked for her, that are basically accusing her of being, abusive. Lizzo is somebody who's kind of built her brand off of, body positivity and empowering songs that are very upbeat and up tempo. She's also always online challenging, stereotypes about plus size women, as well as just trying to, talk to people in general about being positive and usually being an activist for, positive energy. So it is shocking to see her involved in this lawsuit, and there's some serious allegations around it. The women are basically claiming that she created a hostile work environment and she engaged in harassment. Lizzo has come out to deny those claims. I did put her statement up here. She posted it on Twitter or X a couple of days ago, where she explained her half of it. Essentially, she just said that, this has been a trying time, that these are false allegations, and that, time will bear out what's true and what's not true, but she still feels bad to her fans, and she just hates that, this is happening right now. The dancers, I think there's three of them, filed the suit last week, and they basically alleged that there was misconduct by her production company, which is called Big Girl Production Touring, and her dance captain, Shirlene Quigley. Like, amongst the claims, they said that Lizzo pressured them into unwanted, um, you know, sexual situation. She made comments that were perceived about the women's, negative comments about their weight. And she even put them through really bad rehearsals and really grueling rehearsals, to the point that one girl even went to the bathroom on herself. Um, Lizzo basically has hired Martin Singer, who was the attorney for Kim Kardashian, Chris Brown, Jonah Hill, I believe Bill Cosby, and some other people to represent her in the case. But essentially, she's saying that this is not true. She's always been a proponent for Black women, and she doesn't understand. She even has a plus size line for them. Y'all, this is such a difficult and just weird, out of the box situation. I did see both of the women. I believe one of them is named Ariana Davis and the other one is Crystal Williams. They appeared on one of the morning talk shows with the attorney to talk about it. I think sometimes it can be difficult, when celebrities are going through this kind of stuff, because we really don't know what's exactly true. And when it's a civil lawsuit, we really don't know how much of it is accurate and how much of it is like a stretched out truth or is being pumped up by the attorney. Because when you are attorney for in civil litigation and you're trying to make a person look bad on the that has to defend themselves and a celebrity, you have to make everything seem times 10. So if Lizzo was like, for the next 5 minutes, I need to talk to y'all, nobody go to the bathroom, and I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that this is something that happened. Um, if everybody can hold it, let's say she said that. But, if you tell that to an attorney, they'll say, oh, Lizzo didn't allow them to go to the bathroom. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. How did this, happen? So I did see the girls say that, it's very easy for people to judge them, because they haven't been in their shoes. But there are more people joining the lawsuit, and that makes it hard to deny that there were some things that were probably not inaccurate. It's very hard. Lizzo got fame very quickly, like a lot of people do. And I think sometimes it can mess with the ego. You start getting a lot of special attention. You start getting away with things. You feel like everybody should have the same commitment to your artistry as you do. And that is true, but you cannot break laws in that practice. So even if you feel like somebody should be rehearsing for the same amount of time as you do, by law, there's a certain amount of time these people have to work and when they don't have to work, and you can't force that on them. You can't, a lot of times you can't treat these people like they're your friends, they're your employees. And I know a lot of times that's hard for people who are on tour, and they're spending a year or two with these people, or 6 months, and they're seeing them day in and day out, to not befriend them. But I think sometimes when it gets too comfortable, that's when the lines get blurred. And then if the person, let's say, says something that they would normally say to a friend that wouldn't be offended, your employee can be offended. They have the right to be, and it wasn't appropriate. So I'm hoping that this isn't as messy as it seems, because I definitely root for Black women all the time in any new endeavors. Lizzo's definitely entered into a space and place that is mostly normally dominated by non-Black women, and I love to see her win in this space. I hate that this is happening. I think it shocked most of us. This is a liability issue, so we do have to see where it goes as far as like whether or not it will be a problem. These women said that they felt like they were not being heard, that she made weird requests, that they felt pressure to do things when they were in certain places. Like they said they were once in Amsterdam and they were watching some women probably dance in the window because there's like a red light district there. And they were told to try to eat a banana from somebody's like genitalia. It's just a lot of wild and uncomfortable things. And so I really, really hope that this isn't completely true, but I also hate the fact that it couldn't be and they would have been trying to ruin this girl's career if it wasn't. So we're gonna have to watch this play out, y'all. Y'all tell me what y'all think. I'm just gonna watch this play out and see how everything goes because this is just some weird old information that happened this week. This was not on my bingo card. Our last piece of info for the day is our girl Cardi B just keep winning, honey. I need to find out who Cardi's attorney is just in case I fall into anything ever in life. I need to be able to hit up her attorneys. Because, our girl Cardi is no stranger to being in a courtroom, jail. And yet and still, sis came out unscathed again. As y'all know, this past week or so, Cardi was actually performing at Drea's Casino in Vegas. And essentially, she got in trouble for throwing a microphone at an audience member. She was on stage and she appeared to be asking people, because it was so hot in Vegas. As y'all know, we are going through a huge heat wave here in the US, and in places like Texas and Vegas, it's been up to like 120 degrees, 115, 117. So performing outdoors in that level of heat was crazy. For many, many people, it's been like a exhaustion thing and anything. So Cardi was on stage performing. She was in Vegas, and she, at some point, somebody kind of, I guess, their water hit her on stage, and she was like, "That feels great. Y'all need to throw some more in me because it's hot out here, or whatever." Somebody looks like in her entourage was going to get her some water in a bottle, and audience members started to throw up water on her, and she even like backed up a little bit to get them to throw it on her body in different areas, and she was sort of playing with the audience. She then got a water bottle from her, somebody in her entourage on stage with her, and then she was drinking that water. And then all of a sudden, we see her back to singing or whatever, and she's back to rapping, and all of a sudden, we see somebody just throw water like directly on her, like in the frontal, and all of a sudden, Cardi, with the most exact aim I have ever seen, literally threw her microphone, and I believe it hit one person and then it bounced off the shoulder of another. Well, there was a video of her throwing it. The police said that they were, looking for her for questions. They did eventually do that, but the judge has said that she will face no charges due to insufficient evidence. It was caught on multiple camera angles by several people's cell phones and things like that. She just was saying that she had objected to the other members of the crowd throwing water, and she didn't anticipate that was going to happen. We do see something with like a girl is saying she's sorry in the video, but we're not really sure. I know one of the people that was trying to come at her was somebody who was like, it got hit their shoulder, and like the judge was like, no, that's not the issue. Las Vegas police confirmed that somebody did come forward initially to try to report battery, but that there was no crime committed. The microphone itself is apparently on eBay trying to be sold for about $99,000. Somebody claims to be the owner of the audio company and that they have the microphone that Cardi B threw and they're trying to sell it. This is an interesting case to me, mainly because we've been seeing a lot of people get things thrown at them on stage, performers. BB Rexa, was probably the first person I saw. I just thought that this was really alarming. In the past, I've seen other people have things thrown at them. We've always heard of that over the years. You heard even from singers back in the day, women throw underwear on stage and bras and things like that. Drake recently had a bra thrown at him on stage, and he sort of played to it and asked who the person was. And child, when he found out, he was not happy. But BB Rexa a couple of months ago had something thrown at her on stage and it messed up her eye. She had to actually stop her performance, leave, and go get, medical attention. So I do think this is becoming a problem. I do think that people need to learn how to act when they go out to places. You can really vibe and enjoy yourself, But when people start doing that, it restricts you more and more, because if this becomes a problem, and as this becomes a problem, they're going to stop letting people bring even more stuff. You barely can bring anything into a stadium now. Everything got to be in a clear bag. You can only bring like 5 items. We're going to not be able to bring anything after a while. And then we're going to go back to virtual concerts because people don't know how to act. So I just think that this is a lesson learned for everybody. Don't ask somebody to throw nothing at you on stage, and don't throw nothing at nobody on stage, and we'll all be fine. Well, thank you for joining me, y'all, into the Mixxy Mashup. I appreciate it. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how you enjoyed the video. Are you feeling this segment? And I'll see y'all in the next one.